Well, welcome everybody to the Brands Hatch Indy Circuit, where we are about to get our third meeting of the season underway properly for the VW Racing Cup, the Maximum Networks VW Racing Cup, incorporating the Goodyear Touring Car Trophy and TCR UK. We've got a good grid of cars here this weekend, set to race over 3 races actually. It's our first triple header of the year. There's 1 race today and 2 races tomorrow, but the next session out on track is our qualifying session then for which will set the grid for that first race of the weekend. Andy McEwen up here in the commentary position, and we are getting some stunning aerial shots right now on our live stream pictures of the cars that are lining up in the pit lane, set to head out there on track then for this qualifying session, and the Brands Hatch circuit looking as fantastic as ever. Tomorrow we're expecting a good crowd of spectators here. I believe the capacity 4,000 spectators will be here to enjoy the main race day tomorrow, but plenty of action coming your way today as well. The cars for this championship have in fact already been on track once this morning with a free practice session. Read into the results of that what you will, but it was Bradley Kent that was fastest in his Hyundai i30N TCR, with Bruce Winfield second. Bruce Winfield has been performing really strongly in his first season of TCR racing in a DSG gearboxed Cupra as well, which in theory shouldn't be as quick as the sequential gearbox cars around it, but he was second fastest in practice. Max Hart was third, Jack Constable was fourth, and championship leader Lewis Kent was only 5th fastest in that free practice session earlier on. If you didn't join us for our previous couple of races a couple of weeks ago, Bank Holiday Monday at Castle Combe, well, you missed 2 absolute thrillers, which saw Lewis Kent and Max Hart go well and truly toe-to-toe for race victories. There was quite a lot of drama both on and off the track. It all ended with Max Hart being disqualified for a technical infringement in race 1, and then charging through from the back of the grid to finish 3rd in the second race, a race that saw Bradley Kent take his first ever victory in the championship. So it's all tightening up a little bit at the top. The top 3 drivers now in the points, covered by 28 points. It's Lewis Kent who has the advantage, Max Hart second, and Bradley Kent third in the championship. All 3 of them race winners so far this season. The other winner that we've had sadly isn't racing with us this weekend. His car is out on track, but not with him at the wheel. That's Daryl Wilson, who after 3.5 years of trying finally won a round of this championship when he inherited the victory, admittedly, in the first race last time at Castle Combe. His green Vauxhall Astra, which has been a real fan favourite in the championship ever since the series started back in 2018, was victorious in race number 1. But Daryl is not racing it this weekend, instead running it for a driver who also made his debut in the previous meeting, Alex Kite, who was a bit of a Castle Combe specialist at Castle Combe a few weeks ago in a Cupra, DSG Cupra, and had decent pace. Was unlucky to be involved in an accident in race 1, but Alex Kite came storming through the field in the second of those races. Now he shifts from the DSG Cupra over to that green Vauxhall Astra, and we'll be looking forward to seeing how he gets on over the course of the 3 races this weekend. So there is the grid then, lined up in the pit lane, just waiting for a car to be cleared out of the gravel trap, I think, from our previous time attack session, and we're really pleased to be on the time attack bill for the first time ever as well. This is a new partnership between Maximum Motorsport, who run the TCT and TCR and VW Racing Cup competitions, and Time Attack, and they have been able to make this sort of a joint effort now to put together some really higher profile events. And when we get back to normal, whatever normal is going to be, we expect some big crowds to come here and experience everything the Touring Car Trophy has to offer. Caught a glimpse there of the car that's off. He should be back on track fairly shortly, and then we will get this qualifying session underway. There's Bradley Kent, winner last time at Castle Combe, 3rd in the championship, and a case of what could have been for Bradley really, because he should have been on the podium a couple of times at Silverstone at the season opener, but had a puncture on the very first corner of the first race of the season, which meant that he didn't score properly, at least in that first race. Came through from the back of the grid to finish top 5 in race 2, but then of course had a first and a third at Castle Combe. So had Bradley had a little bit better look at Silverstone, he would have been right up there between perhaps his brother Lewis, reigning champion, and Max Hart, who were joint championship leaders when we arrived at Castle Combe last time out. Fourth in the championship, by the way, Bruce Winfield. I said he was doing well in that DSG Cupra, despite not yet having a podium. He was in the top 5 in both races last time, with Darren Lewis in the first of the NGTC Mercedes. For those of you unfamiliar with what the Goodyear Touring Car Trophy is, it incorporates TCR UK, so the bulk of the cars out on grid are TCR cars, but they race in the same class and they fight for the same championship as the NGTC cars, which are the ex-British Touring Car machines. We've got 3 of them out with us this year, 2 Mercedes and one Series BMW being driven by Dan Wiley, and those NGTC cars are pretty comparable on pace these days actually to some of the top TCR machines, so Darren Lewis the best placed of those at the moment. Now we also, of course, have the VW Racing Cup, which makes up a slightly smaller portion of the grid, admittedly, but it has provided us with some really interesting racing and an interesting championship scrap starting to develop, because it's been a real up and down season so far for Ollie Turner, who has arguably been, if not the quickest, certainly one of the quickest drivers in the VW Racing Cup this season. And it just hasn't quite been coming together. He's had a 100% winning record as far as races that he's finished, he's won, but he's had 2 non-finishes as well, and that means that Jack Depper is leading in the VW Racing Cup in his VW Scirocco, and he has a half-decent advantage actually over Russell Joyce in second, 15 points between the 2 of them. Jeff Alden is third, a further 4 points back, and then you get to Ollie Turner on 41 points. He is 24 points adrift of the championship lead, but we know that Ollie is every bit as quick as Depper, the championship leader, and should be able to start clawing some of those points back this weekend. Indeed, Ollie was quicker than Jack Depper by an absolutely enormous 85 1,000ths of a second in practice this morning, so we expect those 2 to be pretty tight together. The other big story from the VW Racing Cup is that Martin Depper, Jack's father, is making a return to the championship. Martin has raced in the championship previously. He is also a former British Touring Car star for many a year, Martin Depper, a real character, and he and his son are both an absolute pleasure to have in the paddock. And Martin was talking at Castle Combe last time about the possibility of him getting out on track this weekend, and that has happened. He's here in another VW Scirocco, so he and Jack Depper in the only 2 Sciroccos on the grid, both being run by Maximum Motorsport, and they were very, very close in practice, only a 1/10 and a half or so between them. Jack Depper was second, Martin Depper was third fastest in that practice session earlier on. So wherever you look in this to be had, and again we get a great look here at the aerial shot of the Brands Hatch circuit. It's just taken them a bit longer than anticipated to move this car from the edge of the road up at Clearways. I'm not entirely sure why. It's been out of the grid, damaged the car, that is hampering the marshals' efforts to get it up onto the flatbed truck. So as soon as that is done, we'll get the qualifying session underway, and qualifying has been pretty intense so far this season. There is the car we're seeing on the screens now. Just being, well, attempting to be pushed away, but the marshals do seem to be struggling a bit to get it out of harm's way. Once that happens, though, we'll get this qualifying underway. Like I say, qualifying's been pretty intense so far this season, with usually Lewis Kent and Max Hart going toe-to-toe for the pole positions, but there is a definite train of thought this weekend that the Cupras, which were a lot more competitive at Combe, are going to take another step forward in performance levels this weekend. From practice, off the pace we expect from this qualifying session, because the track conditions have improved. We had quite a bit of rain last night, so there were a few damp and greasy patches out on track for practice. They all seem to have gone now, though, so we should have a full dry circuit, and we'll see the lap times drop a bit more, but that's where we expect some of these other Cupras. I mean, Bruce Winfield definitely should be on the pace, but Jack Constable was a real star of the show at Castle Combe last time, the number 11 car being run by Power Maxed Racing. That is the same Power Maxed Racing that run cars successfully in the British Touring Car Championship and have for a number of years now, making a real commitment to the TCR UK ranks this year by running a total of 4 cars actually here this weekend for Power Maxed, and in practice and actually stuck it on the outside of the front row at Castle Combe, and then snatched the lead into turn 1 in the first race of the weekend. He did then later lose the lead to Max Hart, but Jack Constable having slipped then further down the order, only registered a 6th place finish at Castle Combe, but he was at the track that weekend, and so we expect him to move up in the championship. He's outside the top 10 in points at the moment. So it looks as though this recovery at Clearways is now getting to the point almost sort of finished. The car is just being winched up onto the flatbed truck. The marshals are busy sweeping the gravel away. A big shout out to the marshals again this weekend, who are, as ever, doing a brilliant job of trying to keep the day's programme running as smoothly as they can with minimal delays. There is Max Hart then waiting in the pit lane. So Max and Bruce Winfield, actually, who were on the pace in practice. Bruce Winfield second fastest even. Max Hart was third. They've got themselves to the front of that queue in the pit lane. So they're going to be the first couple of drivers to head out onto the circuit then, the Hyundai and the Cupra. There you can see the driver of this Renault removed. I think that might have been the issue there. So once that's been done, they've got the car up onto the flatbed, and they will hopefully get it out of the way and give us a green flag for qualifying before too much longer. So yeah, Max Hart, Bruce Winfield, and then right behind them in the queue is the number 77, 77 being Will Powell. Now, Will Powell has had the season from hell so far. Silverstone, they were plagued by mechanical issues, some electronic issue, I think it was, that kept the car from running at all, pretty much. So he didn't score any points, didn't race, really, at Silverstone, did Will Powell. Then he went to Castle Combe and was pretty quick. He was in the midfield. His first race lasted a lap, and then he was collected by an out-of-control Alex Kite. That damaged the car, and unfortunately that was that race done for Will Powell. And Powell did not then score in the second race either, because the car, I think, was too badly damaged. He didn't even get out for race 2. So Will Powell has yet to finish a race, but we know he's quick. He is currently leading his class in the Brit Car Championship. Races a Aston Martin GT4 car, I believe it is, in Brit Car, very successfully. Will Powell making the transition over to front-wheel drive touring cars this year, and he is running under this Motus One banner, and the 77 car, very similar livery to Max Hart, so don't confuse them. Hart is 101, Will Powell 77. They're both quick, although Max certainly the more experienced of the two. Right, finally the green flag is waved then. Cars are heading out onto the circuit. Qualifying gets underway here at Brands Hatch, a 15-minute session. The fastest time gets pole position for our first race later on this afternoon, but it will take them just a few laps to get their tyres up to temperature. You may even see a few of them coming into the pit lane within the first phase over. These being front-wheel drive touring cars, they heat the front tyres up a lot quicker than the rears, so they may do a lap or two to warm the front tyres up and then come in and swap those tyres around. They put the front on the back, they also swap left to right as well diagonally, so the right front tyre goes on the left rear corner, and then they can get slightly more even heat build-up. The one exception actually to that front-wheel drive rule is the car on screen right now. That's the BMW 1 Series, which is an ex-West Surrey Racing British touring car being driven by Dan White. Cars cannot be rear-wheel drive, they have to be front-wheel drive under the TCR regs, but that BMW being an NGTC car purpose-built for the British Touring Car Champion, it is running with its usual rear-wheel drive configuration, and that adds an extra dynamic to the championship. Not only do we have these NGTC cars, but variety of car there as well. The other two NGTC cars just flashed across the start-finish line then. They're on our screens now. The two got Darren Lewis and Toby Byrne. Darren Lewis about to overtake Toby Byrne, actually going up Halewood Hill. So Lewis in the grey and black Mercedes, Toby Byrne the black and red, and it is Darren Lewis that's doing pretty well actually in the championship. Got himself a podium at Silverstone with a third place in race 1, a fifth in race 2, fourth in the first race at Castle Combe, but sadly a non-finish in the second race means Darren Lewis is down in fifth in the championship, but only 3 points behind Bruce Winfield. So Darren Lewis in that grey and black Mercedes could be one to watch this weekend. The NGTC cars sometimes have a little bit of an advantage actually at Brands Hatch. We've seen them racing in the championship over the last couple of years, and they've always gone pretty well at this tight and technical circuit. So lap times starting to come in, but we're not anywhere near the proper lap times yet. Practice saw fastest time set by Bradley Kent of a 50.1, but pole position here a couple of years ago was a 48.4, so we'd expect them to be down into the at least the mid to low 49s, maybe into a 48-second lap as well, but we'll have to wait a little bit longer in the session before they've got their tyres up to temperature before we start seeing those times coming in. Bradley Kent, yeah, goes a 52.4, so a lot more time to be found yet. There goes Will Powell, still weaving around out of Graham Hill. Said that he was making a few mistakes behind the wheel in practice, which he needs to try and iron out. But once he does that, we know that he's got the driving ability to be pretty competitive in this series. Just needs to try and eliminate a couple of these little issues. But of course, he's in cars. He's learning what it's like to not have all of that big fancy aero on a GT car, and so this is a fairly steep learning curve for him. So there's a lot of cars coming to the pit lane now to do that tyre crossover I was talking about practice. Oh, and that's Alex Kite off at Graham Hill Bend. He did that in practice, or he didn't go off, but he had a few hairy moments at practice as he gets used to that Vauxhall Astra. He was telling me earlier on, actually, the rear suspension is very different on the Vauxhall. It's a little looser than it was in the Cupra that he drove last time, and it's a bit snappy, feeling that gets rectified through some setup changes over the course of the weekend. So Dan Wiley here continues to circulate in the BMW. He's just been overtaken by Bradley Kent, who looks like he's on a decent lap actually. He currently tops the times with a 50.974. His first sector is a personal best on this lap. We'll have to wait on this short Brands Hatch Indy circuit, only 1.2 miles in length, so just the two sectors. So there's one halfway down the back straight, the Cooper straight, before they turn into Surtees, and then one, of course, at the start-finish line. Brad goes through with a purple second sector. He does improve slightly then to a 50.855, still 7/10 off what he did in that slightly damp and greasy practice session earlier on. The BMW of Dan Wiley off in testing yesterday when he went into the barriers, so you can see the lights are a bit damaged. The rear bumper actually fell off in practice earlier on because as a legacy of the damage that he sustained yesterday. And he, at the moment, Dan Wiley, is actually 9th fastest, but we're still waiting for the bulk of the field to really put in representative lap times. Bruce Winfield now goes to the top then, 50.7. Bradley Kent down to second, but Kent is on a better lap this time, I think. Bradley Kent, first sector is another purple, so this should now go back to the top of the times. He comes across the start-finish line, and Bradley Kent then will go back to the top with a 50.3, only a couple of tenths away now from what he did in practice, and getting quicker and quicker with every lap. This is, of course, the local track for the Essex and Kent Motorsport squad that run those two white, orange and black Hyundais. Lewis Kent, the reigning champion, in his 4th year of TCR competition, but Bradley, his younger brother, has come through the junior racing ranks in the UK, particularly through the Ford Fiesta racing ranks, so he has experienced drive, but this transition into the TCR car has been absolutely phenomenal for Bradley, and he's really pushing hard through Surtees. This looks like being another good lap actually, although his first sector wasn't quite as quick as it had. So we'll see what sort of improvement he can get here. He needs to find 2 tenths to get back to pole position. Comes across the start finish line now, and we will see if he's able to do it. Yes, he has, because I think Bruce Winfield possibly has had a lap time disallowed, because Winfield was quicker than him, wasn't he, a while ago. So the order then, Bradley Kent quickest, Bruce Winfield 2nd, 5th, Will Butler 6th quickest at the moment, with Alex Kite 7th. Jack Constable is 8th, 9th place for Chris Wallace, making his TCR debut, a former VW Cup runner who had a nasty shunt at Coombe last time out when he hit a Marshall's post actually. Everyone was okay, but the car was not, and so Chris Wallace not in that VW for obvious reasons, and instead he Kent's championship winning Hyundai from last year, with Dan Wiley rounding out the top 10. The VW Cup ranks, by the way, led by Jack Depper at the moment, down in 12th place overall, with Jeff Alden 8/10 slower than him, and Martin from Russell Joyce, I'm afraid he's been in and out of the pit lane a few times with some issues. Right, more changes at the top, and it could not be much tighter at the top of the times. Look, Lewis Kent has gone 2nd, Max Hart 3rd. Those two are separated by just 5/1000ths of a second then, the two championship contenders, with Lewis now going quicker again though. Lewis Kent goes to pole position with a 50.102. That is now the fastest lap time that we've seen all day. Bruce Winfield is about to come through and complete a lap, just dives up the inside there of the number 19 VW of Jeff Alden, who currently finds himself 3rd in class. Can Winfield improve? Doesn't look like he will. Stays in 4th place for now. So the order now is Lewis Kent quickest, Bradley Kent 2nd, Max Hart 3rd, Winfield 4th, Darren Lewis goes 5th, ahead of Will Butler, and Jack Constable jumping up to 7th. So they're getting some pretty big improvements now. There is the returning Martin Depper in his number 30 VW, just betting himself back VWs away from Jeff Alden, and he needs to watch his mirrors because the very rapid Bruce Winfield is on his tail. Look in the Cooper, you can see the speed differential here between the TCR cars and the VW Cup cars, and Martin Depper is on a lap himself. Winfield had to dive up the inside against both drivers some time, and that may well affect Bruce's chances of improving. His first sector had been a personal best. Let's just follow him across the line. Can Bruce Winfield improve on 4th place? Crosses the line, the timing screen takes a second to update, and he does. He still goes to pole position, even 6/100ths of a second, has gone quickest in the qualifying session. What a turn up for the books it would be if Bruce Winfield could get himself on pole position, and that is Jack Depper off halfway up Halewood Hill, possibly after a spin. It was hard to tell whether he'd stopped or spun and stopped, if you see what I mean. He's got the car going again now, though. The green Scirocco about to come into view here on our beautiful aerial shot. It is limping down the hill, actually, isn't it? So there may be an issue for Jack Depper, the championship leader, remember, in the VW Racing. Now quickest, Lewis Kent second is in the pit lane, so is Max Hart actually fourth, and now our pole sitter heads in as well. Let's see what Chris Wallace can do here, racing away with Martin Depper, who, under ordinary circumstances, they'd be fighting for position in the same class, actually. Because Chris Wallace, as I said, has graduated from the VW Cup into TCR this weekend, but that was, in the end, not an improvement for Chris. In fact, that was an outlap for Chris Wallace, who in your programmes, by the way, those of you who are here this weekend at Brands Hatch, good to see a healthy crowd here this afternoon. In your programme, Chris Wallace is listed still in his VW, but he has moved into this TCR Hyundai i30N, so that's one amendment to the programme this weekend. Jack Constable we're seeing on screen now, and that didn't work in the end, so that's going to lose him time. But Constable had improved to 5th in recent memory. Jack Constable then into the top 5 again, really looking to try and put a full weekend together. He's had flashes of pace, has Jack, and he heads into the pit lane, and Max Hart almost runs it. No, Will Powell that was, nearly running into the back of him. That could have got a bit messy as they came through Clearways and Clark Curve. 3 cars together here. This is not a race, boys. This is a qualifying session. You really should be trying to find a bit of clear track, but they were all, I think, on quick laps there. That was Will Powell not improving in the end, so staying in 10th place. Behind him was Darren Lewis, who was also not improving, probably because they were tripping over each other, and Chris Wallace still trying to get his tyres up to temperature, I think. 4 3/4 minutes to go then. Bradley Kent is back to the top now, by the way. Bradley Kent with a 49.724, 0.3 of a second, fastest lap of the day. I did think we might see slightly quicker lap times than that, though. It may still be a bit greasy in places. Maybe the traffic is causing a few problems because of this multi-class element that we have these days in the Touring Car Trophy, with the VWs sharing, which is something that started last year. And that may just be hampering a couple of them with their ability to find clean air. Bruce Winfield, by the way, and Lewis Kent and Max Hart, 2nd, 3rd and 4th at the moment in the session, have all just gone back out on track on fresh tyres. So with 4 minutes to go, they're only going to have time to get a couple of laps in here, I think. So we'll see what their pace is once they've got the tyres up to temperature. Can they launch a last-minute assault on Bradley Kent, who has been a real revelation this season? What Bradley Kent is doing this year is reminding me a lot, actually, of what Max Hart did last year. Max came into touring car racing as a complete newbie in 2020, racing a Cupra, actually, rather than a Hyundai. And he had a background in single-seaters, Max Hart, the Irish driver, and came in and was on the podium in every. He's made the step forward in a Hyundai to being a race winner and championship contender. Bradley Kent almost fast-tracking that first step. He's not having a season to bed himself in. He is straight on the pace, has already got a win under his belt, and of course he's now on pole position by 0.3 of a second over Bruce Winfield second. Can't say enough here about Bruce Winfield either. That 2nd place time, and 2nd place would still be a really, really impressive performance. Dan Kirby there we're seeing going through. He's languishing a bit down in 9th place, actually. Dan Kirby a little off the pace maybe this weekend in his Powermax Racing Cupra, and Dan that had decent pace actually at both Silverstone and Castle Combe. Kirby had a 3rd place finish actually at Silverstone in the 2nd race, backed up after a 4th place in race 1, but then Castle Combe had unfortunately a couple of incidents as well. So Dan Kirby in that white and blue Cupra looking for points this weekend. Still no lap time from Russell Joyce, so it looks like his session never really got started. Jeff Alden currently rounds out then the 4 VW Cup entrants that we've got out there. Alex Kite in the green Astra just negotiates Chris Wallace as they head through paddock. work their way 11th at the moment. And the 9th fastest TCR car, but to make this point, the TCR cars race in the same class as the NGTCs. It's only the VW Cup that have their own separate point system. Now, Bruce Winfield on those fresh tyres is one to watch here because he just put in a personal best second sector. So Bruce Winfield has got the tyres up to temperature now. The white and sort of bronze-coloured number 37 Cupra, the DSG car, he's somewhere in the first sector at the moment, I think. Monitor his sector tyres with interest to see whether or not he can start challenging for pole again, but he's 3/10, remember, away from pole position, and his first sector actually isn't an improvement on this lap, so he's still got a bit of work to do to get the tyres in the ideal operating window. In VWs, Jack Depper now leads a Depper 1-2, actually. Jack and Martin Depper just 68 1/1000ths of a second separating those two at the moment, so father and son pretty much... there is Jack Depper, actually, right on cue, turning his way through clearways in the green Scirocco. Martin Depper there, you can see, doing his best to stay out of people's way as he works his way down the back straight. We've got less than a minute to go, so drivers are going to be starting now their final qualifying lap of the session. Bradley Kent, the pole sitter, is in the pit lane, so he will go no faster in this one. It is all about what Bruce Winfield, Lewis Kent and Max Hart can do. Jack Constable here in this little group is coming through on improvement. So he stays where he was in 5th position. No personal best sectors coming in here from Winfield, Kent or Hart at the moment, so this late pit stop hasn't really made much of a difference. Is that rain actually on that camera lens? That's a spot of rain maybe. That could explain why we're seeing fewer and fewer improvements right now. That was our pit camera there, just looking at Bradley Kent, who, if that is the case, is going to be feeling pretty comfortable here about his chances of notching up his first pole position. His first win last time, of course, and only natural, therefore, that he would potentially find himself now going for that first pole. Into the pit lane have come Lewis Kent and Max Hart, so no improvement from them. That is currently on a lap, can still improve it. Alex Kite is improving in the first sector. He's all the way down in 11th at the moment, takes the checkered flag though and stays there. So I think that is going to be pretty much it. We'll get the last few cars across the line now, but it's Bradley Kent then that gets the pole position. Bradley 3rd in the championship. Really needs to try and do something about taking points out of his brother Lewis here, and that was the way to do it. Bradley on pole, Lewis 3rd, and sandwiched between them, Bruce Winfield in that DSG Cupra with his best qualifying effort by far. Bruce has yet to be on the podium. Could that happen later on this afternoon? We'll have to wait and see. Jack Constable is 5th, Darren Lewis is 6th, Toby Byrne 7th, Will Butler 8th, Will Powell 9th, and Dan Kirby down in 10th place ahead of Alex Kite and Dan Wiley, with Chris Wallace rounding out the TCT and TCR competitors. In the VW Racing Cup, it is Jack Depper ahead of Martin Depper's son ahead of father by 68 1/1000ths of a second, with Ollie Turner actually struggling a bit there in 3rd position. Jeff Alden 4th, and Russell Joyce we never did see out on track. So the results then provisionally from qualifying here are Bradley Kent on pole position for our first TCT and TCR race later on today. Bruce Winfield will join him on the front row. Lewis Kent and Max Hart row 2. Jack Constable and Darren Lewis on the 3rd row, ahead of Toby Byrne and Will Butler. Darren Lewis, by the way, the highest qualifying NGTC car. Then it will be Powell and Kirby on the 5th row, Kite and Wiley on row 6, ahead of Chris Wallace, with Jack Depper on pole in the VWs, Martin Depper alongside him. Ollie Turner and Jeff Alden will be on row 2 in the VWs, and hopefully we will get Russell Joyce out there in the race later on. Right, I'm going to run downstairs now to have a word with our class pole position sitters. I'm going to leave you in the capable hands of Alexi, though, to fill a little bit of time and look ahead to what's coming up later on today.
Thanks, Andy. So just while Andy heads downstairs to discuss, to interview, and so on, let's just take a closer look at these results. We thought we might see the first ever TCR pole position from Bruce Winfield, driver who comes from a time attack background, something I know and love very well. However, Bruce Winfield then managing to qualify in 2nd. Again, as Andy emphasized, these results are provisional. But for now, let's take a look. We have Bradley Kent then on pole position, managing to keep both Bruce Winfield and his brother Lewis Kent at bay. A bit of a fratricide situation going on there. Then we have in 4th, we have Hart in the Hyundai i30 and Max Hart ahead of Constable in the Cupra TCR in 5th. Then we have Lewis in the Mercedes A-Class, Byrne in the Mercedes A-Class, Butler in the Cupra TCR sequential, and then we have Powell in the Hyundai i30N, and Kirby in the Cupra TCR, and those are our top 10 across both TCR and TCT classes. Then we have Kite in the Vauxhall Astra TCR, Wiley in the 1 Series, Chris Wallace in the Hyundai 130N, and that rounds up our TCR and TCT qualifiers. Then we move Volkswagens. We have Jack Depper ahead of Martin Depper in the Volkswagen Scirocco's. Then we have Turner in the Mark 7 Golf, Alden in the Mark 5 Golf, and Joyce in the Mark 7 Golf actually did not set a lap time. Now, this was only qualifying. Let's take a look at the weekend schedule for those of you who are following along at home. So we have the let's just have a look. So qualifying now. Then we have the race is currently scheduled for race 1 of this round is scheduled for 2:55, a little bit later this afternoon. And then tomorrow's schedule for the VW, TCT, and TCR looks like this: 11:45 tomorrow morning, and then race 3 at 2:20 in the afternoon. And that's what the schedule is looking like at Brands Hatch here. Indy layout, which is what we're running. One of the shortest on the calendar. And just hang on a second.
You're having an in-joke moment there, Alexi.
Oh dear. No. Wait, who is this? Is this Maz?
Hi.
Oh my God, everything's overlapping. Okay, hello Maz. I think we're still on the TCR and TCT situation for now, as Andy runs down to do the podium interviews with our top qualifiers.
Very well, I'll catch you in a bit then.
Yes, let's do that. Thank you. So Maz then just getting ready into position for the drifting a little bit later today, which is also on the bill that TCR is sharing with Time Attack today. So I think that's a pretty interesting qualifying there that we've just had. Interesting to see, you know, a real lap time specialist in the form of Bruce Winfield nearly claiming pole position, getting increasingly comfortable in this new formula to him. And so it'll be interesting to see how this develops further as the season and his TCR career progresses. For now then, it is Bradley Kent on provisional pole position. There you go, you can see him getting out of the car there. And yeah, just ahead of his brother Lewis Kent. It's interesting to have a few of these family situations here within TCR. We both have the two brother combination, the Kent brothers, Bradley and Lewis, and then we also have a father and son combo of Jack and Martin Depper, which is it's quite a dream, really, isn't it? I think that's quite nice to go racing with as a father and son combo. That's pretty cute. And then of course we have the brothers situation. I can see Andy there just getting ready to kick off with the interview, so I'll hand over to him right now.
Well, I've hot-footed it down here into the pit lane. I've caught up with our pole sitter, Bradley Kent. So you've got your first win, yeah, and now you've got your first pole as well, and not by a small margin either.
No, I think what the team was saying is I'm actually a second quicker through Sector 1 than anyone, I believe. I'm actually losing the time through Sector 2 and Sector 3. So if I can nail those two sectors as well, I could have gone a lot quicker. The car was absolutely fantastic. It's still on rails from Castle Combe. I think I've gradually now got the confidence in the car, and it's taken the rounds to win and things like that. I can't think of anything better than to put it on pole straight after a race win.
Now, starting on pole here at Brands Hatch, though, can be tricky, can't it, because of this camber on the pit straight. What's the game plan for the start of this race? Because you really want to get into that first corner first. To
be honest, I'd love to get there first, but even if I did drop back, I feel like I will have the pace to get back through them. But that's not really the ideal situation. I don't want to be falling back. I want to get a best start as possible and get away, because I know I can do that. And same goes, I don't know the order of what happens where we finish in races to race 2 and race 3. So we'll have to see what happens there. But the plan is to get gone and just keep going.
And that's the thing, isn't it? There are 3 races this weekend, lots of points on offer, so a great opportunity to score well, but you've got to play the long game a bit, haven't you? You can't really go, you know, hell for leather in race 1 and risk a non-finish.
Definitely, with a 4th, which is my worst place, which is still not bad, but with the 2 drop scores, we can drop that 4th and have a 1st and a 3rd, I think it is. So I've always said I'd rather finish and keep getting points rather than going for something stupid and not finishing at all. Me and Lewis hopefully will get on the grid, is he? Which is still brilliant. And Bruce second, he's done really well. But yeah, it'll be good battling, and race 1, race 2 and race 3 will be fantastic, hopefully.
Well, we're looking for position. Good luck for race 1.
Thank you very much.
Well, there you go then. Bradley Kent on the pole position for our first Goodyear Touring Car Trophy and TCR UK race of the day. That's coming up a bit later on this afternoon. For now though, back up to Alexi in the commentary box.